At the police station, the detective paused the surveillance footage on a single frame that hurt worse than grief. My daughter, Lucy, sliding my Las Vegas cashier's check across a teller's counter like it was a grocery coupon. The bank's timestamp glowed in the corner. The camera caught her smile, the same one she used as a little girl when she'd taken cookies before dinner. "Is that your signature endorsing the back?" he asked gently. "No," I said, steady as I could manage. "That's her handwriting, copying mine." He didn't press. He just slid a form toward me and a pen that felt heavier than any slot machine lever I'd ever pulled. "Mrs. Levin," he said, "do you want to press charges? I am 67 years old, a grandmother, and until that moment I thought the worst pain a mother could feel was watching her child fall. There is worse. There is watching her jump and knowing you have to let the law be the net." Before I signed, he added, "It's a felony because of the amount." He didn't need to tell me the amount. It was burned into my brain by every cheer, every flashing light, every congratulations from strangers 2 days earlier under the neon ceiling of a casino where the carpet looks like it was designed by a fever dream. That's where this begins for you. For me, it began much earlier, with a green tin of travel mints, a promise to my granddaughter, and the quiet decision, in a hotel bathroom that smelled like citrus cleaner and expensive hand soap, to hide the luckiest piece of paper I've ever held where nobody would think to look. Stay with me until the end and tell me where you're listening from. Because the middle of the story is where the twist lives. Right when you think the money is safe, the doorbell rings, and you find out who has been memorizing your habits for years. 2 days before that pause in the footage, I stood in front of a slot machine that had just turned from a toy into a siren. I didn't go to Las Vegas to gamble. I went because my church friend Lila turned 70 and wanted to see fountains dance to music and eat a slice of cake bigger than a book. "Come on, Margot," she'd said, tugging my hand as if we were still two girls stealing worm rolls from the cooling rack after Sunday service. "We'll put 20 in a penny slot, sing along to Sinatra, then go home." I put the 20 in. The lights went delirious. I won. I didn't scream. I blinked and then laughed, the way you laugh when a child shows you a magic trick you've already figured out, except this was real and loud and pulsing. The casino staff came out with clipboards and a tax form. "Congratulations," a woman with perfect eyeliner said. She guided me to a quiet glassed-off room that looked like a bank had moved into a nightclub. "Cash or check?" she asked. "Check," I said. I've never liked carrying anything thicker than a wallet. They printed it with my full name, Margaret Levin, and slid it across with a pen for endorsement when I got home. I took that check with 2 hands like you take a newborn, careful, reverent, half terrified someone will bump your elbow. I tucked it into the hotel's room safe along with my passport and the green tin where I keep mints and, since Harold died, his lucky quarter. I have never believed coins could bring anything but bus fare, but I carried that quarter because it made me feel like he was in my pocket, ready to argue about which diner had better pie. "Don't post anything," I told Lila when she tried to take a photo. "Not yet. I wanted to walk through my front door first. I wanted to call my granddaughter, Sophie, from the kitchen where we made pancakes too big for the spatula. I wanted to tell Lucy in person, because no matter what else is true, a daughter should hear good news to your face." On the flight home, the city shrank into glitter the way it always does, and I watched a woman in the next row play a puzzle game, moving jewels into lines until they disappeared. I slipped the check between the pages of the Gideon Bible in my tote and put the green tin on top. The Bible had always hidden better than any cosmetic bag. When you're a mother long enough, you learn to recognize what people notice and what they never touch. Lucy picked me up at the curb. "Mom," she shouted, waving like we were in a movie scene. She looked beautiful the way she always has, big eyes, quick smile, hair pinned back in a barrette she'd borrowed from me when she was 12 and never returned. "How was it? Did you win anything?" "A little," I said. Her eyes flicked to my tote. "A little has a smell when it's a lot." She hugged me, and the hug lingered a second too long, her hands flattening the side pocket of my bag like she was memorizing the shape of what lived there. Once upon a time, I would have said it was concern. Once upon a time, she would have asked me about my feet swelling and whether I drank water on the plane. "I can take you to the bank before they close," she offered, putting the car in drive. "Get it out of the way." It's Sunday, I said. Banks are closed. She laughed. Right. I forgot. Let's at least get you home. At home, I put the check in the old fireproof box that lives behind Harold's winter coats in the hall closet. He kept warranty paperwork in there 80 years ago, or that's what it felt like. Now it holds birth certificates, the deed, and one late husband's last letter to a future he never saw. The box is old enough to look like junk and heavy enough to make a thief think twice. I spun the dial to the numbers only 3 people on Earth had ever known: Harold, me, and, years ago, when she was still a teenager who needed her Social Security card for a summer job, Lucy. We had tea at the kitchen table. She scrolled her phone while I told her about the fountains and the wedding cake Lila ate with ceremony, and the man in the Elvis suit who kissed my hand after the slot machine stopped screaming. How much is a little? Lucy asked without looking up. A blessing, I said. Enough to change a few things. Like paying off my car, she said, joking but not joking. It's a terrible thing when you can hear a calculator inside your own child's laughter. Sophie came over that night with a hand-drawn poster. Grandma's a winner. She is 8 going on 800, with the wisdom of an old owl and an instinct for comforting that she didn't learn from cartoons. We had a pizza picnic on the living room rug. Lucy pretended to fall asleep on the couch while I tucked Sophie into the guest bed and told her the story about the time Harold tried to build a treehouse and instead constructed a modern art installation that stayed in the maple until the city parks department took pity on us. At 11, Lucy startled awake, said she had an early shift, kissed my cheek, and left. When you're 70 inches from adulthood, you learn the weight of a door closing. This one felt lighter than it should have. I looked through the peephole a moment after she left and saw her pause on the porch. Her shoulders squared. She turned, tried the handle, and found it locked. I slept well anyway, dreaming of the clatter of coins I no longer carry and the quiet joy of knowing bills won't bully me for a while. In the morning, I took a shower, wrapped my hair in a towel, and went to the hall to get my robe. Harold's coats loomed like a row of tired men. I moved them aside. The box was a few inches forward. I had not moved it forward. The combination dial's faint red line sat a notch off from where I'd left it. I spun the dial. The click that usually felt like a handshake didn't come. I looked down. The metal face had a thin crescent scratched under the spindle, the kind that comes from a pair of keys someone shouldn't have used. I sat down on the closet floor, towels sagging onto my shoulders, and breathed. Anger at my age looks like stillness. Panic at any age looks like motion. I chose stillness. I brought the box to the kitchen table. The little drawer beneath the old radio held a flathead screwdriver, a relic from when radios needed them. I loosened the face, pressed my ear to the seam the way I'd seen on a detective show, and turned the dial slowly until, there. The whispering click of tiny teeth. The doors swung open. The deed was there. The certificates. The letter. The green tin. The check was gone. I sat there for a full minute, hands in my lap like I was listening to a hymn. Then I picked up the phone and dialed Lucy. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "Call me. Everything okay?" 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Her reply, "At work. Love you." I texted again. "Bank will stop a check if I report it stolen. I'll go when they open." This time, the dots didn't appear at all. I put on a dress with pockets and comfortable shoes and went to see my neighbor, Armin, who is 60 and retired from a job that involved cameras and patients. "Do you happen to have your doorbell cam pointed at my walkway?" I asked. He did, and within 10 minutes, he had 3 clips on a flash drive. Clip 1, Lucy arriving last night. Clip 2, Lucy leaving. Clip 3, at 12:23 a.m. The porch light snapping on and her silhouette returning, moving fast, key in hand like she owned the moon and the lock. Armin watched my face. "You okay, Margot?" "I will be," I said. "Can you help me email those to myself? And can you make me one more favor?" He nodded before I asked. Good neighbors are like that. At the bank, I found out what anyone who has ever had a son with a comma knows. Between branches and fraud departments, everything is process. They photocopied my passport. They made me sign a form that said in all caps I had not given anyone permission to endorse the check. "There's a chance we can flag this if it comes through here," the manager said. "But if it's deposited elsewhere, we'll need to coordinate." She took the flash drive like it was a casserole she didn't have room for in her fridge. "I can't view that," she said. "But the police can." I went to the police station. The intake officer was a young man with a polite voice and a badge that looked too new for its own good. The words felt surreal in my mouth. "My daughter took a check I won in Las Vegas." "Do you know the amount?" he asked. I told him. His eyebrows went up and then drifted down into neutral so quickly I almost laughed. He took the flash drive and wrote my name down, the way you write a recipe you know you'll make again. "If she cashes it, the bank will have video," he said. "If she uses mobile deposit, there will be device data. If she goes to a check cashing place, we can subpoena their footage. This is the kind of case where time matters." "You mean the money could be moved around?" I said. "She could wash it through another account." He tried not to smile. "Have you been watching crime shows, ma'am?" "I've lived 67 years, I said. "People aren't complicated. They just think they are." He gave me a card with a case number and promised a detective would call. I went home to wait in the quiet that follows a decision. You think the moment of betrayal is the loudest part, but it's not. It's the silence after you pick a side against your own blood. It's the sound of your hands not shaking because if they do, everything will spill. At 4 in the afternoon, the detective called. "I'm Detective Calder," he said. His voice had the warm roughness of a man who tells the truth even when people don't like it. "We've been in touch with the bank across town. A check with your name just hit their system at 2:49. They've placed a hold as per protocol. We're pulling the footage." "Thank you," I said. "She'll try to say it was a gift." "That's common," he said. "Is it?" "No," I said. "And, because truth needs witness," I added, "last month she asked for $500, and I told her I'd put in groceries instead. She said that was controlling." I said feeding your family isn't a loan. He was quiet a beat. "Do you have texts?" "I have everything," I said. I didn't, not yet. But I was about to. That night I called Sophie. "Grandma's making pancakes tomorrow," I said softly. "Do you want to come after school?" "I have ballet," she said. "But I can come after." Sophie is the gold in my life, the kind that doesn't tarnish, the kind that doesn't fit in a safe. "It's a date," I said. "Bring your practice ribbon." I sent Lucy another text. "I'm making pancakes with Sophie tomorrow. You can come if you want to talk before the bank finishes the hold." She replied instantly this time. "I'm sorry I took it." My stomach dropped, not from the words, but from the speed. She'd had an apology ready like a coat by the door. I stared at the text long enough to memorize where the commas would have been if she hadn't been typing with her thumb and guilt. "What did you do with it?" I typed. "Bills," she wrote. "And I put some away. I can give you some back." "Some." I stared at the wall and saw, as if it had been printed there, the day she turned 6 and asked why we didn't have 3 cakes like our neighbor had. "Because 2 is plenty," I had said. Plenty is a word you have to learn. Plenty is a decision. The detective called back to say the footage had arrived. The next morning, when I walked into the station, he met me at the door with a paper cup of coffee and a look I recognized from doctors, concerned, braced. He led me into a small room with a screen and a table and a box of tissues that might as well have had a sign, "For mothers." The video began with a wide shot of the bank lobby. People in line made their phone faces. Lucy at the counter looked composed and sweet in the way she could summon when she needed to. She handed the check through the slot. The teller flipped it over. The camera on the teller's side caught a clean view of the endorsement. Not my script. The L in Levin was like a swan dipping too far into the water. When I sign my name, the L stands upright, proud and plain. Harold had teased me that my letters marched like good soldiers. Lucy's always danced. Even when she tried to copy mine, a dancer's ankle showed. "Mrs. Levin," the detective said, "we can file for an arrest warrant for forged endorsement and theft." "Do it," I said. He nodded, then paused the footage on a side frame I'd missed. Lucy had pulled a green tin from her purse, a mint tin that matched the one missing from my box. The camera caught her opening it. Something small and silver rolled into her palm. She rubbed it like a talisman before sliding it back in. Harold's quarter. The detective muted the clip, as if he'd sensed the sound in my head. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "It's a quarter," I said. "It's a story." And then I made the first of a handful of hard, clean decisions. I want a restraining order. I want her nowhere near me or Sophie. He nodded again, writing it down. "I'll contact Child Protective Services to make a welfare check purely because there's a substantial stressor in your daughter's life and a potential legal issue. It's not punitive. It's precaution." "Good," I said, as if that word could hold the world in a straight line. He slid a sheet over to me. "We need a list of other recent financial irregularities, if any." I started to say there weren't any. Then I remembered the lost checkbooks last Christmas and the department store card I hadn't opened, but somehow had in my name with a minimum due I'd paid because arguing felt heavier than $29. "I'll go through my files," I said. "Do that," he said. "Also, this kind of theft often comes with a flurry of legal maneuvers. If she tries to file for emergency conservatorship claiming you're incapable, call me immediately. Judges hate being used as weapons." The idea that my own child would try to paint me incompetent was so ludicrous it felt like something a daytime show would reject for being unbelievable, until the next day, when the doorbell rang and a courier handed me a notice. "Petition for temporary guardianship over the person and estate of Margaret Levin, citing confusion, recent windfall, and frequent forgetfulness." My hand hovered over the trash can and then moved to my scanner instead. I sent a copy to Detective Calder with one line, "She works fast." He responded with two, "So do we." That afternoon I made pancakes while Sophie practiced her ribbon routine, and I kept my phone on the counter like a third utensil. When the knock came, it was the detective and a woman with a calm face. "This is Ms. Wren from CPS," he said. "We just want to lay eyes and make sure everyone's okay." Sophie showed Ms. Wren how she could make her ribbon draw a heart in the air. I flipped a pancake and didn't burn it. They left with a smile for me and a card for Sophie that had a number she could call if she ever felt worried. "We do that for all kids we meet," Ms. Wren said quietly to me. "It's a standard safety net. It's not a judgment." When they were gone, I called Lucy. "Come at 6, I said. "The detective wants you to turn yourself in instead of us coming to get you in front of your child." "What?" she choked. "Mom, no. You can't. We can fix this." "Come at 6, I repeated. At 5:52, she arrived. She wore a hoodie she'd stolen from herself at 16 and a look of straight fear that stole a little of my anger's edge. She stepped into the kitchen like the floor might collapse. "Mom," she said softly. Can we not do this in front of Sophie?" "Sophie's at Lila's," I said. "She's staying there tonight." "You called CPS on me," she whispered. "The detective did a welfare check," I said. "Because if you can take my check, you can do other dangerous things." "That's not an insult. It's a pattern." "Sit down." She sat. I laid the green tin between us. "Where did you get this?" I asked. She stared at it as if it had sprouted thorns. "You always hide things in plain sight," she said. "You taught me that. You taught me all your tricks, Mom." "No," I said. "I taught you how to bake with what you have and how to fold a fitted sheet and what forgiveness looks like when the apology fits. Everything else you learned from your own wants." She looked at me then with the same eyes she'd had as a newborn, dark and searching. "I didn't think you'd even try to cash it," she said. "You sit on money. You worry it to pieces." I wanted to get ahead of it. "Get ahead of what?" I asked, and for a moment my anger cracked and something like raw sadness peeked out. "Of me paying my utilities? Of me fixing the garage door? Of me buying you a new alternator if you had asked?" She opened her mouth and closed it. "I put most of it in my savings," she said, weaker now. "We can call the bank. You can have it back. Just don't do this." "You forged my name," I said. "You broke into my home while your child slept down the hall, and you took a paper that didn't belong to you so you could make numbers change on a screen. You want me to pretend that's a misunderstanding?" She looked at the floor, cheeks blotching into a flush I recognized from her first lie about washing her hands before dinner. She was 39 and still the child who wanted the cookie and believed if she didn't see you see it, it didn't happen. The detective knocked lightly and stepped in, hat in his hands out of respect he didn't have to show. "Lucy Levin," he said softly. She looked up at him like she might sprint, and he raised a palm. "Turning yourself in is the kindest version of this. You'll be processed and released pending arraignment because this is non-violent and you have community ties. But you need to come with me. She turned to me. Mom, please. I have withheld many things in my life. Sharp words, second helpings of cake when sugar made the child wild, my need to win an argument. I could not withhold this. Go, I said, and the word was a knife that cut us both free. She went. I did what women do when the world tips, washed the dishes already clean. Lila came over and held my elbow like I might break. You did the right thing, she said. The right thing, I said, feels like being peeled. Sometimes fruit needs peeling, she said. Otherwise, you can't get to the good part. We didn't call the jail. The system called us. The next morning, Lucy was out and her lawyer called to say words that sounded like apology run through a strainer, misunderstanding, family matter, stress. I sent him the footage from the bank, the doorbell clips, the text where she admitted taking it, and the guardianship petition stamped with yesterday's date. He called back 5 minutes later and said a word I hadn't expected to hear so soon: settlement. It's a criminal case, I said. You're going to have to talk to the DA. I mean with you, he said. Restitution. If she returns the funds and you decline to cooperate, this goes away faster. She can return the funds, I said. That doesn't make the crime disappear. At the arraignment, Lucy stood in a pale sweater and looked 10. The judge looked at me over her glasses with a kindness that didn't mean leniency. Mrs. Levin, she said, do you intend to pursue a protective order? Yes, I said. I'm not doing it to punish. I'm doing it to teach. The courtroom air shifted, and almost sounded like a page turning. Lucy's face crumpled, and the judge lifted a hand the way you calm a skittish animal. Ms. Levin, she said gently, right now your mother is the victim and you are the defendant. The smartest thing you can do is show her and the court you understand those roles. It took 12 days for the bank's hold to become clean money again in an account they opened for me with security settings that would make a spy wince. Lucy had moved funds from the check into 2 accounts, one hers and one under the slivered name of a business she'd tried to start last spring, a candle company called Glow Lucy. The DA froze both. A good lawyer, I have learned, is less a sword than a mop, sopping up the mess while you watch from a chair and wonder how one broken pipe flooded the whole house. In that 2-week wait, I did something I should have done 20 years ago. I made a plan that had nothing to do with my child's behavior. I hired an attorney with laugh lines and a spine. We set up a trust for Sophie's education, with me as trustee and Lila as successor. I scheduled the garage door repair, the dentist, the appointment to finally have Harold's suits altered so I could donate them to the Veterans Center. I changed the safe combination. I took the green tin to the locksmith and asked him to drill a tiny hole so I could place the quarter inside and seal it with a rivet. The locksmith looked at me and didn't ask. He did the work like a prayer. Lucy texted me twice during that time. The first time, she wrote, "Please, can we talk? I'm going to meetings. I'm trying." Meetings for what, she didn't say. The second time she wrote, "I know I messed up." I panicked. I was scared you'd forget about me when you had money. Forget about her? As if money could erase a child. As if a number with a comma could make me unmemorize the way her weight on my hip felt when she was 2. As if some check could rearrange the sound of her laugh into one I didn't know. The third text came from a number I didn't recognize. It read, "This is Erin. Lucy's friend. She's not okay. Could you call her?" I stared at it. Then I dialed my attorney and asked what I could legally say to a third party without violating the temporary no-contact order. "You can say, 'I hope she gets the help she needs,'" the attorney said. "And you can say, 'Please respect the order.'" I wrote exactly that. He replied with a single word, "K." At the pretrial conference, the DA offered a deal, a felony reduced to a misdemeanor if Lucy completed a financial responsibility program, repaid the negligible fees the bank had charged, and attended counseling. "She's your daughter," the DA said. "I will try this if you want me to. But if you'd like mercy to be part of the lesson, this is the path." I stood there feeling every year in my bones, and yet I felt clear in a way I hadn't in months. "Take the deal," I said. "But I want something noted in the record." The DA waited. "I want it noted that she forged my signature, and that I did not and will not pretend that was anything but theft." He nodded. "We can make a statement on the record." He studied my face. You're not weak for wanting a way forward. I'm not doing it to be kind, I said. I'm doing it because I want my granddaughter to have a shot at growing up in a house where corrections are possible. The judge accepted the plea. Lucy said the words guilty and cried in that hiccuping way she did at 5 when the dog ran away for an hour and then returned to the porch like he'd never left. She turned to look at me once. I didn't smile. I didn't glare. I set my face like a door that is not open right now. Maybe later, we'll see. After, in the hallway, her attorney approached me. She's scared, he said. She thought the money meant you wouldn't need her. I never needed money to need my child, I said. She's the one who confused needing with wanting. He nodded. She'll have conditions. You'll have space. Space can be holy. It can be a fence around a garden so the deer don't eat what you've planted. I went home and watered the rosemary and the thyme and the stubborn basil that has never quite taken. I set a plate at the table for one plus the ghosts of all the dinners we'd had and would have. I wrote a letter to Sophie for the day she turns 18, explaining what happened in language that doesn't make excuses or scars. I put it in the trust binder. I placed the green tin, now riveted shut, on a new shelf and, for the first time since Harold died, turned on the radio to the oldies station and danced with my own shadow in the kitchen. But life isn't a flat line. It ripples. 3 weeks later, Lucy filed something else, a request to modify the protective order so she could attend Sophie's school recital. We were all listed as potential attendees. Lila and I dressed nice, but not fancy, and sat 2 rows behind. Lucy came in late, sat in the back, cried quietly when Sophie bowed. I saw her hand twitch toward her phone and then back to her lap. Afterward, in the parking lot, she stood at a distance and lifted her hand in a small wave I pretended not to see, not out of cruelty, but out of obedience to a boundary that was holding us both up. You want the revenge in a story like this to be a slam of a gavel, a pile of money delivered by truck, a daughter kneeling. What I got was different and better. I got my money back and a paper trail that redrew the map of our family, with clear borders and well-lit crossings. I got a granddaughter who learned that love is not a blanket you throw over bad behavior to make it look like sleep. I also got one more surprise. The detective called and asked if I wanted my quarter back. We seized the contents of a small fireproof pouch from Ms. Levin's closet as part of the warrant, he said. You're Minton. Do you want the coin returned to you or held until the case closes? Hold it until it's truly done, I said. Then I'll pick it up. I could have said, mail it, as if it were a library book, but some things you receive in person. Months passed. Lucy completed her program. Sophie learned how to do a cartwheel without looking like she was falling in slow motion. I learned that a day without waiting for your phone to ring is a day with an extra hour in it. The DA filed the final paperwork. The detective left me a message. Your quarter's ready. At the property room, a woman with kind eyes brought out a clear envelope. She had me sign a log, then placed the coin in my palm like it was a baby bird. Harold's coin. The knurling worn smooth in places, the eagle's feathers barely feathers anymore. I held it. You kept it sealed? I asked. We don't tamper, she said. Chain of custody is holy. I looked up at the word holy and felt, for the first time in a long time, something like relief lift the corners of my mouth. Thank you, I said. On the walk home, I detoured to the park where Harold used to play chess with men who believed they had the only right answer to every question about pawn structure. The bench was empty. I sat anyway. Across the path, a mother knelt to tie her son's shoe. Across another path, a teenager practiced skateboard tricks and fell and laughed and tried again. Everything moved. Everything held. I haven't been back to Las Vegas. I didn't need to go to make peace with what happened there and afterward. But sometimes, at night, I take the green tin from the shelf, hold it like a relic, and remember the sound of strangers cheering when a machine flashed all its lights for me. That glow was brief and noisy. The glow I keep now is quieter and stays on. Lucy asked for coffee 6 months later, through the lawyer, with a counselor's note attached that said she had made progress and would be safe to meet if I wished. I said yes and brought Lila. We held it at the little cafe where the barista knows exactly how much cinnamon you want regardless of what you say. Lucy walked in wearing the careful hope of a person who has learned that the first step is to say, "I did it," without a but. We sat. She tried, twice, to open with excuses, and then stopped. "I'm sorry," she said. "No ifs. No ands. I was wrong. I took from you because I wanted something you had, and I wanted it faster than life was offering it to me. I hurt you and I scared Sophie. I understand why the order is there. I'm doing what the court asks. I'm also going to meetings. Not the kind you thought. The kind where they make you inventory what you do to get the things you think you deserve." I nodded at the counselor's note like it was a small candle in a drafty room. "I'm listening," I said. We talked for an hour like people on opposite sides of a river who can see the bridge but aren't sure yet if it will hold. When she left, she put her palm flat on the table, not reaching, just showing me the back of her hand the way a person shows a horse she has no stones. At home, I made tea and sat at my kitchen table and thought about all the versions of motherhood there are. The young, the tired, the furious, the patient. The version I inhabit now is the watchful kind, the one that can let the phone sit quietly and trust that the right people will call when they should. Here's the part of the story where I tell you the outcome, because you deserve a clean ending. Lucy completed the program. The felony stayed reduced. She paid the fees. The protective order, after a year of no violations, softened into a structured agreement that allowed her to see Sophie at school events and, later, on supervised visits. She got a job that did not pay her pride, so her pride learned how to live on less. She kept going to meetings. She learned to return what wasn't hers: time, money, stories she embellished because the truth made her feel too small. I used part of the money to put a new roof on the house, this one sound enough to laugh at weather, and the rest went where money should go, into a future that doesn't depend on chance. I didn't buy anything flashy. The only new thing on my counter is a bowl I found at a yard sale with a chip so perfect it looks intentional. Sometimes people ask if I regret pressing charges. They think it's nosy curiosity, but I hear what they're really asking: if love means never calling the police. My answer is always the same. Love means not leaving people in the dark and calling it mercy. Love means light. Sometimes the law is the only switch you can reach. One evening, months after the coin came home to me, Sophie and I baked a cake we cut into crooked slices and ate warm. "Grandma," she said, frosting on her chin, "are you rich?" "I'm rich in you," I said, because that's the kind of sentence adults like to say to children when we want to sound wise. She rolled her eyes affectionately. "8 going on 800. "No," she said. "Like money rich." "I have what I need," I said. "And I saved for what you'll need." She nodded, satisfied. "That's better than rich," she said. "That's ready." Out of the mouths of babes, Harold would have said, and then he would have argued about which diner had the better pie and been wrong and happy to be wrong. I wrote this down for you because stories like mine get turned into little lessons with bows on top, and people forget the jagged parts. They forget that the check was real and cold and had my name on it, and that the hand that slid it across the counter belonged to a person I held the day she was born while whispering her name over and over so she would know it belonged to her. They forget that a detective's kindness can be the rope that gets you out of a well you didn't fall into but nevertheless found yourself inside. If you've listened this long, tell me where you're listening from, not because numbers fill some blank in me, but because it helps to know how far a story travels when it has to carry both a win and a wound. Tell me so I can picture you, wherever you are, nodding at your own kitchen table where the light falls just right on something you almost lost, but didn't. And if you're a mother who finds herself on the wrong side of a bank camera, I hope you find a detective with a soft voice and a spine, a courtroom with a judge who understands that mercy and consequence are cousins, a neighbor with a doorbell camera and decency, and, most of all, the strength to hold a pen without shaking and write your name where it belongs.
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video, like and subscribe. Bye bye!